Hello?
Hello.
Hi, Shruti. How are you?
Hi, John. I'm fine. How are you?
I'm doing well. So today we're going to interview Arthur Schopenhauer.
Yes, Mr. Arthur Hare. He
Uh,
likes
Hair? He likes hair? Okay, so Herr Schopenhauer
Hare Schopenhauer.
then. Excellent.
Uh, but he's been here with Eric already,
Oh, nice. Okay.
and he's saying hello to you, but it's not a very normal hello. It feels very different. It feels like he doesn't want to say hello, but he's saying it.
That sort of suits his personality, doesn't it? All right. Yeah, that's fine.
As in, okay, I gotta do this sort of feeling. Not very excited, but I'm
Okay.
okay to do this sort of feel.
I love it.
So he
He'll
says,
pep up as we go along.
John, to you, and he just wants to say that he's looking forward to the talk.
Okay. Nice. All right. Very good.
Let me describe to you what I see.
Yes.
Um, he's standing very still for me, so I can describe. Sort of making me a bit uncomfortable. But no, he's quiet and he's standing, and he's about 5'3", 4. I don't know. Doesn't seem very tall. And as if he's hiding from me, he's hiding himself, making it difficult for me to describe. But very even keel, very quiet, not giving away quite a lot of himself or information. That sort of personality. Yeah, that's all I can come up with.
Okay, then. Should we start with our questions?
Yes, please.
Okay. My first question is that Herr Schopenhauer, you were sort of the third generation of German idealist philosophers to come along after the first generation with Kant and Fichte, and then the second generation with Hegel and Schelling and Hölderlin. You sort of represent the third generation of these men, and you sort of very much differ from them in that you did away with God. For you were the first of this group to not have the idea of God as essential to your system, and instead you plugged in to that semiotic vacancy this idea of a cosmic will underlying all things that brings everything into being. What I'm wondering is, when you died and went on to the other side, did you then encounter the reality of God, and was that a surprise to you?
When you said he was a third generation, he was giving me a feeling that he didn't like being compared to the other two generations, and he's very proud of his thinking and his philosophy. The way he, you said that he had a different philosophy than the other two generations. He's proud of that he was able to bring that forward, almost like a pioneer first time. He's and then you mentioned about his philosophy, where you say he spoke to he spoke in terms of the cosmic universe and everything. So he says when he went to the other side, he got a deeper understanding of his own philosophies. So whatever he was feeling or thinking, while in this body. When he went to the other side, he understood it even better, and he could see it even better, because then he had a broader perspective.
I see. Okay. It seemed like when you first started out, you had a hard time getting an audience, but you did get an audience from Goethe. Goethe loved your works. He loved your dissertation on the fourfold root of the principle of sufficient reason, your book on color, although I guess he was somewhat reticent because he felt some competition there. And then, of course, The World, your famous book, The World as Will and Representation. Goethe devoured that and loved that. And you spent some time with him and had conversations with him. I'm wondering what your relationship with Goethe was like. Was it something that was very pleasing to you, or was it more frustrating?
He was saying it was always, he's not, initially it was pleasing, but he's not completely defining it as pleasing or frustrating. It was never frustrating. It was never frustrating. The sense of competition actually fed him in a positive way. So it was like he enjoyed that competition with his friend, and they played off each other, sort of competing. So there wasn't any frustration there. And they also shared a lot of opinions and personal opinions about the personal life, personal relationship. So they also shared a lot of their personal life away from the work area. They also shared personal life with each other. And they were on the same 90% of the time, with the same ideology and the same philosophies. They could agree with each other on stuff 90% of the time, he's saying. There was very little difference, but in general they had a good relationship.
Okay. Herr Schopenhauer, you, I believe if I remember your biography correctly, you fathered a daughter at one point when you were on an Italian journey, I think, and this daughter's life was very short-lived. And I'm wondering did you ever encounter her on the other side?
Yes.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Straight, yes.
And everything was okay?
Yes, there was mutual understanding.
I see. Okay. And you did, for a number of years, you seemed like you had an affair with a Berlin cabaret dancer. And that went on for a while. I'm wondering why you never married her.
Why you never married the cabaret? He never had the intention to marry her. Never. Since the start, he's saying. He knew that. But why was that? Probably because of the work she did.
I see.
Yeah.
She would be the equivalent to today a sex industry worker. And that was something that was an issue between them?
No. Because there was mutual understanding. She knew, he knew.
Uh-huh.
But they really liked each other and they connected on the deeper levels.
Why did the relationship ultimately fall apart?
He's saying the time had come where we went our separate ways. And we knew it would eventually be that way. So that felt like the right thing.
Did you have regret about that, or did it just seem like the right thing to do, to go your separate ways?
There wasn't a regret in the sense I should have married her, but there was a deep sorrow for being apart, and a lot of missing of each other. They missed each other.
Yeah.
So if he would have been able to continue the relationship the way it went, he would have liked that.
Was there ever anyone else that you met that you considered marrying, or was marriage just something that you were absolutely opposed to?
He says he was open to the idea of marrying, but he could never settle down with anyone who he thought would be a good wife.
Okay. Let's shift now to the intellectual world, from the world as will to the world as representation. I'm curious about, you talk about in the world as will and representation, how the scientist is interested in phenomena but stops, refers them to an ultimate principle like the law of gravitation or the law of inertia, and then kind of stops and doesn't bother questioning the whyness of these principles, whereas the philosopher's role is to sort of look for metaphysical absolutes and question why these laws that structure the universe exist. What I'm wondering is, do you think that the incredible advances that have taken place in the sciences are, as you must know, enormous in the couple of centuries since you lived? Has science rendered philosophy obsolete now, do you think?
Sorry, ask that question again.
Are philosophers just unnecessary to our civilization now because of science?
He disagrees with that. When you were commenting about why, the question, the theories are understood the way it is, depending on the physical laws. But the physical laws are not really questioned, that why gravity and why this and why that. He was commenting on that. He was saying that, he's repeating it for me. He's saying, because then they would have to go and prove it. And that's very difficult or probably impossible with the current advancements of science. Even now, it's very difficult to prove the metaphysical. He's saying, let alone, he's saying it's difficult to understand it, let alone prove it. So that's where the philosophers play a very important part. They talk about all these possibilities, which science can then go on proving or disproving. So he puts philosophers ahead of the scientists, because philosophers think about all these possibilities which science can then go and say, okay, this makes sense as per science, this doesn't. So science is about proving, he thinks, and that's why he thinks philosophers are very important.
Okay, does the current theory for the origin of the universe is the Big Bang, that everything emerged from a cosmic singularity and expanded, and the universe is expanding. Is this correct, Herr Schopenhauer? Did everything come into being with an initial Big Bang?
Wow. I never thought of this thing. It's amazing when you ask these questions, to get the answers from Philo. It's amazing. He's not giving me a straight answer, but he's doing some comparing here. He's saying that singularity is correct, and we are all a part of that singularity. Are you aware of the concept of source? So he's comparing that singularity to source. About the Big Bang, though. He is talking about Big Bang is not the place where everything was generated all at once. That's how he sees it. There was also a general evolvement of things as well. So would you then say that this source is the singularity and Big Bang is... He's saying you can say that. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Herr Schopenhauer, you were really the first philosopher in the West to begin incorporating ideas from India. The Upanishads had just been translated not too long before you came along, and you were the first to sort of synthesize them with Plato and Kant into your own unique philosophy. The Hindus see the world as ever recurring, over and over again, the same events cycling, the universe creating itself and destroying, creating and destroying. Whereas we in the West have this model of a singularity, a Big Bang, from out of which everything came. But are the Hindus right? Has this happened many times? This Big Bang? Have there been other universes before this one?
He was talking while you were talking as well. That's why I look like I'm struggling to. What was he saying? He was yes. He doesn't. He believes in the reoccurrence. He talks about there is reoccurrence. There is no linearity, start and the end. And yes, everything sort of, he shows me that image of everything coming out of singularity and then going back to singularity, coming out of singularity, going back to, there's like a pulse to it, which I understand as he sees it, expanding and then collapsing again, expanding and collapsing again. So that cycle. Do you want to know anything more about that?
I just wanted to know, so the Hindus, in other words, were correct, basically, that it's been creating and destroying itself. Has this been going on forever? Just endlessly?
Yes. But he's saying it doesn't repeat itself exactly. He's talking about it taking different forms. Yeah.
Were there humans in previous epochs of other Big Bangs? Did we exist as humans, or were there other beings?
Wow, my mind is completely going crazy at the moment. Because
This is big stuff.
Big stuff. Oh my God. Probably that's why I didn't learn philosophy, because my mind
Too much.
too much.
Where are the limits?
Where are the limits? Right. Sorry. Yeah. What about the he is talking about, he's saying we are looking at it in a linear way. So, as in the form of time. First this happened, then that happened, then that happened. But he's saying that it's a part of the same energy, So almost like it's all happening at the same time. I don't understand. I see it as a linear thing. Can you please explain it in a more understandable way? He's talking about the same energy changing and morphing and changing and morphing, which also is what everyone else talks about, Eric talks about the same thing. I know I've said that before. And he's also giving me the same feeling that it's all at once. Everything is happening all at once. So, and he's not talking about parallel universes and quantum and stuff, which is totally beyond my understanding, but I'll try to catch on to it.
Can I interject and ask, is God the cause of all this? Is it God? Is there a supreme being behind all this who is making these big bangs happen over and over again?
Are you saying God in the sense of who is more powerful than all of us?
Yeah.
Supreme power?
The ultimate, the prime mover. No? Okay.
He is talking about how we are a part of that God. We are a part of that God in the sense that God is not more powerful than us. Because we are same thing what Eric says, that we are also a whole, but part of that whole. So we are a representation of that God, which is within all of us. So we can't. There's no one entity who's more powerful than others. No one entity can act on itself because we are all together that entity.
But what caused the universe to create itself and then collapse again and then create like a beating heart almost is the image I get. What's causing that?
What's causing the really? He's talking about desire, curiosity.
Okay. His will, in other words. So he was right about the will. There's a cosmic will driving it.
It's just the desire to experience that's causing the movements everywhere. And every direction is like a different universe. And it's all having the same it's all having the experiences and learning and remembering and this desire to experience it.
Okay, so it is rooted in a cosmic will, a desire that runs through everything to come into being. Herr Schopenhauer, you maintained in your book, The World as Will and Representation, that what's going on behind the scenes are these Platonic ideas. Plato's forms are sort of struggling against each other to incarnate in the material world. Does this turn out to be the case? Is this correct that there are Plato's ideas something that exist as forms on the other side that desire to incarnate in matter?
Plato's ideas. He's talking about how Plato was correct. His ideas does make sense when you are on the other side. What he said, his ideas do make sense. When you're on the other side, you can see the, what do we call it? you can see the desire taking form of physicality. So I think he agrees with Plato
Okay.
that there is something that has a desire to come into the physical world.
And in a sense, then your theory of evolution doesn't really agree with Darwin's, where Darwin maintained that all mutations are random. They're just constantly spat out by organisms, whereas the fossil record does not agree with that, because there should be a lot of trial and error organisms, a lot of useless organs, and we don't see that. What we see is harmony, symmetry, and beauty amongst all of these forms, and they're missing transitional forms. So is it the case then that, in accordance with your theory of will bringing these mutations into being, that these mutations are not random? They're deliberate. There's some kind of thinking that's going on behind the scenes that then manifests in these new mutations? Is that correct?
Yes, he was using the word intellect.
Okay.
He was using the word, a very nice word, which I don't understand. Probably a German word, I don't know. Which says knowledge and intellect.
Wissen? Wissen? Wissen, the German word for intellect.
Wissen.
Wissen. Is that what he's talking about?
Probably, not sure.
This raises a question, by the way, that I'm
Yes.
sure more than one viewer is going to be curious about, which is to say that we've been interviewing men whose native language is German. How is it that we can interview them in English from the other side? How does that work?
Because I don't hear them in a language. I get block of thoughts, I get images, and I get emotions. So that's how we talk as well. In our head, we get thoughts in our head, and those thoughts we then translate into words and emotions. And sometimes we are feeling something emotionally, and we find it difficult to express because we can't find a word for it.
I see.
So in the same way, when I communicate to the spirits, I get images. So if I see Mr. Arthur here, Arthur here, I see him in my mind's eye. Yeah, I see him in my third eye. So I get image in my mind. And when he talks, he gives me thoughts. And those thoughts then I have to translate into words. Some people are clairaudient, which is really helpful. I wish I was. What happens with them is they can hear words. They don't have to receive block of thoughts. They can clearly hear words. And then they're just like, you can say a machine who listens through the mic and talks through the speaker. With me, I get block of thoughts and I completely embody the energy. So I completely sort of become one with Mr. Arthur. Shruti becomes Mr. Arthur, sort of one with his energy, in the sense I can also feel his emotions in that way.
I see.
I can feel his fear, his excitement, his sadness. I can feel everything that he's feeling, and that's why I'm an empath, because I completely feel, I become one with the energy.
Gotcha. Okay, that all makes sense.
Yep. Transferring his block of thoughts into words.
Yeah, I was just curious about that. Okay,
that's why it's not a barrier.
Continuing then with this train of thought that we were on, Herr Schopenhauer, in your later edition of The World and Will, as Will and Representation, in the chapter on the metaphysics of sexual love, you talk about how one of the things that's really powering the sexual attraction between a particular man and a particular woman are souls on the other side willing themselves to come into being through that particular couple. Is that correct? Is that what's really happening with sexual attraction? Are these effects of other souls that want to come into this world that are bringing us together? Is that correct?
Other souls, they're coming here.
Souls on the other side who want to come into this world, but they need the right two parents, so they pull them together. and that becomes the reason for their sexual attraction?
Did he say that?
Yes, that was his theory, and yeah.
Very interesting. What do you believe now? Because I know about these concepts. I already have an opinion about how this works. I means me, Shruti.
Sure.
So I'm arguing with him what he believes now. Does he agree with what I understand?
Can we hear the debate somehow? Plug it in and turn it on for us?
Well, I can talk.
All right.
It was all crazy. He's arguing with me that how that can be a case in sometimes.
Okay.
Because yes. So he believes in some cases that is true, but of course he also sees the other reasons for sexual attraction. What if he if a couple come together but have no children, never parent a child? So there are n number of reasons why two people choose to come and have sexual attraction between them. There are many reasons, including that one.
Okay. Herr Schopenhauer, can you answer this question that I'm curious about? When a woman becomes pregnant, at what point does the fetus contain a soul? At what point? Not a life soul that runs the body. That's obvious that's already there. But what you called a person's intelligible character, which is their unique soul, their personality. At what point does that enter into the fetus?
He believes it enters the fetus okay, give me any one image. When the heart starts beating, he says. When the heart starts beating.
So the soul is there from the beginning, once the heart forms?
He says yes.
Okay. What happens if a woman aborts the fetus then? Is that is that killing the soul, or has the soul already agreed that this would be the fate of it? What
what happens if the soul is aborted? Yes, so he's talking about it's okay if the soul is aborted, because the soul was probably aware of the life it was going to have, the short or the long life it was going to have. The soul is aware of it.
Okay. Another question just popped into my head about all this, which is that the population of the Earth has been expanding. Obviously, we're at 6.5 billion people right now. Over history, there have been more and more souls incarnating. Where are all these souls coming from? Is there an infinity of souls already there waiting for bodies, and they're eager to grab onto them, or what? How does...
He is saying that the souls are a form of energy. So any form of energy that you can see around you can come back as a soul. So mass is also an energy. Mass is also a form of energy. So So anything you can see with your eyes, or anything that you can't see with your eyes, which is energy, can come back as a soul. So so it's just this part of that singularity which has a will to come back as a soul. Everything we see around us is a part of that singularity, and anything can decide to come back as a human being.
Okay, so incarnation is a voluntary act. It's not automatic. It's voluntary.
It's voluntary act in sync with everything else. So it is a voluntary act.
I'm asking because, Herr Schopenhauer, you maintained that life was a mistake, that life is based on suffering. It's based on forms stealing the material from other forms by killing them and pulling that into their forms so that they can exist. Their will can manifest itself at the expense of other forms. So life seems to be something that's inherently pessimistic and that should not be. But yet, on the other hand, we have this idea where all of these souls are eager to get down here into matter, into bodies. So it seems like their eagerness means that life is not a mistake, but it's something that all these souls want. They want to experience incarnation. So have you changed your mind about life? Do you still think that it's a mistake?
He is he's in a defensive mode, I think. He's talking with his hands up. He was talking about Buddhism.
Mm-hmm.
And he was talking about he wishes he could have delved deeper into it, into Buddhism. He still, because I have read it as well, he still agrees with the life being suffering. And is it a mistake? That was your question, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you still think it's a mistake? It is a deliberate mistake. He's saying it's still a mistake, but it's a deliberate mistake.
A deliberate mistake. Uh-huh.
And sometimes a non-deliberate mistake.
Mm-hmm.
Either way, there is suffering. They're saying we should ask the question, why the suffering? Why the suffering?
Not so much why the suffering, but I just wanted to know if once he got to the other side, maybe he changed his mind about it, and that it is a good thing. Like with Nietzsche saying that it's a good thing, and he used to criticize Schopenhauer's pessimism about it by saying that, no, it is a good thing. And Schopenhauer says no to life, and Nietzsche says yes. I was just wondering if Herr Schopenhauer might have changed his mind once he got on the other side.
He hasn't changed his mind.
Okay. It's still a mistake then. All right.
Yeah, he's saying yes, and he is also saying he wants to understand. Yes, he was all, and he's saying we should ask why the suffering, and then you would know why the mistake, why it's a mistake.
Does he give an answer for that? Why is there suffering? Is it just based on desire and frustration of desire?
Exactly, yes.
Yeah, frustration of it, and yeah, okay. What do you think about the way Friedrich Nietzsche took your ideas and sort of turned them upside down and said yes to life? He gave an unqualified yes, that life is something that should exist, that life is something. I mean, what do you think about what Nietzsche did with your ideas? Did you like them?
I think did they have a relationship at all in this life?
No.
No, they were born apart
Yes.
sometimes. He is talking about how he glorified life, glorification of life, which is good, he's saying, but he sees problem with that. But he understands that philosophy as well. But he so what do you think about Nietzsche's work? He's saying he did a good job at explaining his philosophies, and the way he contradicted your philosophies. He's saying both philosophies hold a very strong very strong foundation, or they are based on a very strong form of thought and ideology, and both are correct in their own ways. But I wanted to explain my philosophy or my chain of thought in that way, and Nietzsche want to explain by valuing life, his form of philosophy. He says, I still like my way better.
No surprise.
Yeah, no surprise there. Okay, so no. He says, yeah, he likes the way he. It says it's a more direct approach. His way has a more direct approach to understanding life, questioning it, understanding it. So that's what he thinks.
Okay. Herr Schopenhauer, you claimed that the only three escapes from the human mind's servitude to the will are philosophical contemplation, aesthetic arrest in art, and the ascetic's renunciation of the world, as in Buddhism. With regard to art now, so much of art since your day has included more and more sexual content, from paintings like Courbet's Origin of the World, in which he paints a woman's vagina up close, down to recent films like David Cronenberg's Crash, or any of the novels of William Burroughs. The sexual and pornographic content that you regarded as something that was not, because it excites the will, it arouses the will, you regarded it as something that should not be in art. Is there such a thing as pornographic art? Is there such a thing as art that is still art, even though it contains sexual themes in it and therefore activates desire and the will, or not?
What you said helps to he still agrees that art helps to the getting out of the will, the desire. Um, he's saying any form of art will help that.
Okay. All right. So, okay, that's interesting. You're the first philosopher, as we said earlier, in the Western tradition, at least since Plotinus and his teacher Ammonius Saccas, to bring in the influence of Hindu philosophical ideas. And in your case, this was the incorporation of the Upanishads and some Buddhistic themes. Lately, though, there's been kind of a trend in academic philosophy away from the East. And there's not been a lot of attention, at least among Western philosophers anymore, in looking at Eastern ideas. Do you think that it's important for us to still incorporate Eastern thought into Western philosophy, or do Eastern ideas constitute problems that were, specific to the Hindus in their time and their place, and they don't have relevance to our modern situation? I mean, what do you think about that?
He's talking about how the building blocks of the what is the word? Material, the building block of material life, physical life, is still the same, even if you go back thousands of years, or even if we go in the future thousands of years. It doesn't matter. What happened to the people eastern side of what happened to them, or what state they were in with their philosophies. The philosophies will still hold the values. Philosophies that were there thousands of years back will still hold value because they are timeless, he's saying.
So we should do more to incorporate those ideas.
Yes, there is value in that, in the sense it still gives you a different perception, a different chain of thought to contemplate and form your own knowledge, form your own opinion. You can interfere your own, infer your own theories based on that. So by not paying attention to these thoughts or these theories or these philosophies, we are losing out on treasure of knowledge that can be used.
Okay, that answers the question then. So we need to work more to bring them in. Okay. Right now, Hegel is very popular, largely because of the influence of Marx. And a lot of the other German idealists are also popular, but for some reason you're not right now. Why is that? Do you know? Do you know the answer? Why people aren't reading your stuff as much now as they? I mean, you used to schedule your classes at the same time that Hegel was teaching across the hall, and he had full classrooms, whereas you only had a couple of students. Sometimes I've heard no students at all, but you would lecture anyway to an empty auditorium. So what I'm wondering about is this rivalry between you and Hegel. Is it ongoing still? I mean, have you encountered Hegel on the other side?
Making a joke. He says, I'm teaching him now.
Oh, I see the shoes on the other foot now.
He makes a joke. Yes, he said that he sees he understands Hegel understands Schopenhauer's theories better now. Um, and he's talking about how what he was teaching, Hegel, was more in sync with that society, and that's why felt more right, or they could relate to it more because it was in sync with what was going on in the world at that time. And Schopenhauer was teaching something which was not in sync with the society he was teaching in. He says, if I taught the same thing in the Eastern side, it would be better accepted, more understood, more valued, more respected. So he's saying it was because where he was teaching, what he was teaching, what era. So that's how he explains it.
Okay, that makes sense. Have you reincarnated, or do you have an incarnation going on right now?
Very interesting. And where is that? He is incarnated as a woman now in this time. Not at the, it was some time back. And Mayan culture, Mayan at that time. When was that?
Mayan culture was like 500 BC.
Which was before.
Yeah,
Before.
Yeah, it goes back. Yeah, before Schopenhauer's Incarnation.
Why does he show me that then? Oh, because he's showing me a jungle sort of area.
Okay.
Sort of a tribe area,
Uh-huh.
which looks like a Mayan culture. And he's a woman in that era. So sort of living very down-to-earth life.
Mhm.
Very facing all the troubles a woman faces in as a woman, in the jungle set, in the natural setting. So he shows me that sort of life.
Uh-huh.
So probably a tribal life, not a Mayan, because that's what it looked like to me. But that sort of life.
Yeah. You're famous, Herr Schopenhauer, for your misogynistic essays, especially the one famous essay that you wrote on women, where you made fun of them. And do you still not like women, or how do you see what you wrote about women? You're very famous for. It's a funny essay. I mean, you're very famous for the misogyny as being like over the top in that essay. How do you feel about that essay now?
It's very interesting you asked this question, because he was talking about that earlier. Yeah, as in before our interview, when I was cooking in the morning.
Oh, I see.
So he was talking about how his idea of a woman, or how his relationship with a woman has been affected by his relationship to his mother, because if someone has a trouble with a woman, you can always trace that back to his relationship with his mother and his experience with his mother. So he was saying that affected his perception. So what was the core, sort of fundamental issue?
You disliked your mother, Johanna? You disliked her, right?
He uses a strong word. Not dislike, but even stronger word, sort of.
Oh, he hated her?
Hated her.
Detested her? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, that's sort of a word.
Why was that? Can I ask why? What was it? Did it have anything to do with his father's suicide? His father committed suicide. threw himself off a roof of his warehouse. Does it go back to that episode?
He says that his mother was a very strong woman, very strong personality. She couldn't probably. He gives me an impression that she couldn't provide herself emotionally to anyone. She felt very emotionally aloof to him. But it wasn't obvious out there that personality of her, where she was not emotionally available for anyone. And he grew up believing that that's how women are. Always putting self first in a selfish way, not in a nice way. So that's how he grew up understanding women. And that shaped his perception about women, he's saying. And about your dad. He's talking about how his dad has his own issues, but also the unavailability of his mom played a part in it. And as a child, he could only blame his mother. And sort of grew up with that feeling. And that thing in her, her personality of being emotionally detached, made him detest her, not being available.
Okay. We asked Friedrich Nietzsche this question last time about the current explosion of pornography in our society, but I want to put the question a little differently this time. Do you think, Herr Schopenhauer, that pornography causes harm to the relations between the sexes? Is it harmful?
He's saying, of course, it's harmful.
So he has a different view than Nietzsche that did.
Is it? Yeah, he thinks it's harmful. And he's giving me many thoughts at the same time, so I'm losing a few here, trying to sort of make sense of it all and interpret it all together and give it to you a summary of things. He was explaining how it breaks the relationship. It takes you away from the reality. And you spend your days trying to fulfill or trying to get an experience which is not possible in the physical reality. It's only possible in the other reality, in your mind, not in the physical reality. And then that brings, not being able to fulfill a desire or will always bring in that frustration until you understand and accept that it won't be possible, and you're able to tell yourself that.
Yeah, sort of like Baudrillard's idea of hyperreality, where we prefer the hyperreal because it's more real than reality. So pornography becomes this sort of ideal realm that we strive to achieve, but it poisons relationships because it's in a realm that's out of our reach, out of the reach of the. Okay, yeah. All
He
right.
was saying because there's a reason we came into this reality. We want to experience this reality, and there is a reason for this. And if you are not in your body, if you're not present in the reality, then it's difficult for you to experience what you want to experience. So you are here but not here. You're somewhere else. The more you are here, the better you can accomplish what you want to accomplish when you came into this life. And yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. One last question, Herr Schopenhauer, if I may. I asked Nietzsche this too, but what do you say to people who are skeptical that we're really communicating with you in the afterlife?
So many thoughts all at once. Okay, so he is talking about this being the actual reality. The afterlife is the actual reality. He's saying if you want to deny this, then it will be very difficult to understand life, make sense of it all, without that reality. And if you keep questioning enough, if you keep questioning this life enough, you will see why you can't have this life without this other reality. Something else as well. So he's saying, he was also talking about dreams in between. He's saying, what is dreams? He was talking about dreams. He was comparing the dream state or the dream reality with this reality. So he's saying, can you explain your dreams when you sleep? He was talking about that. And it's the same place where I am, where you go when you dream.
Okay.
That's
All
what he
right then.
was.
Those are all the questions I had for you, Herr Schopenhauer. Thank you very much for being gracious enough to come down and chat with us for a bit. We really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Yeah, he says he didn't expect it, but he enjoyed it.
That's something he would say. That's great. I love it.
Yeah, that's what he says. He has this thing in his eyes. It's like a twinkle in his eye, which it's almost like a teenager or probably a 10-year-old. He's up to something.
Yeah.
A cheeky twinkle in his eye. He has that. I like him. He's a nice. Yeah.
Okay, that was great. I'll stop the recorder now.